Hello, Dr. Cinema here. Looking back at all the videos I've uploaded so far, I've come to realize that November for me has somehow become superhero month, especially this past week with all the DCEU movies I reviewed. So I figured let's just keep trend going for the rest of November for how many videos I'll end up uploading. So today I want to talk about possibly one of the greatest movies so far this century, The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, this movie has been regarded as one of the best superhero movies, if not the best superhero movie. And it's very understandable to see why. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that happens. However, with recent superhero releases such as Wonder Woman and Logan, I've gone back to looking back on The Dark Knight. I've begun thinking, is there a chance, even just a small chance, that The Dark Knight might be just a little bit overhyped? Oh, shut up! He gets real defensive. But yeah, guys, let's look at this. So The Dark Knight, like I said, is directed by Christopher Nolan, and it's the second of the Dark Knight trilogy, the first being Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, also directed by Christopher Nolan. And with Dark Knight, there are a few issues that I have to talk about. First of all, a lot of the dialogue is not really actual dialogue you'd hear from normal people. I mean, you've got the big speech from Harvey Dent saying you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And you've got a speech from Alfred saying how men just want to see the world burn. And there's just a lot of talking and such from people that just wouldn't normally be spoken that way. That's just not how people would speak it. Now, for some scenes, that actually works pretty well, depending on what the context of the scene is. But it's pretty easy to tell when it's not really appropriate. However, some of the best dialogue does, of course, come from Heath Ledger's Joker. And while there are certainly scenes where he is a little bit more on the Christopher Nolan type of dialogue, it still works for the most part. However, this also brings up another issue, the emotional impact of the movie. Now, we all like to see these characters, but we never really have that kind of an emotional impact with them. I mean, a lot of the supporting cast just feel like, in some ways, plot devices, just something to keep the story going, and just to, just be used later on in the plot for a reason to do something or whatever. So they don't really have well-told, described characters or backstories. That's an issue that can be seen in the movie. And while I did have fun watching Batman do this stuff and everything, I wasn't really completely connected with him because again, he really doesn't show much of any emotional expression whatsoever. So that's an issue there. Now, let's talk about the action in this movie. Now, first I was like, okay, the action is still pretty good, right? Well, with the way it's edited, it seems it's edited in a way where you think it's actually exciting and everything. And while I did like the whole, come on, hit me, most of the action scenes are just edited in a way where you think it's awesome and exhilarating, but really, it's not really anything that significant. All of it's just pretty much just big explosions and just people just running around just trying to get in the position of shooting guns and such. And while this issue is much more visible in The Dark Knight Rises, we do see it in The Dark Knight. And even when The Dark Knight does hand-to-hand combat with some of the people in the movie, it's just not really edited in the way the actual Batman in the comics would do it. He's a martial artist, a guy who's mastered many different forms of combat, uses gadgets as well to help in his fighting. However, in the big screen with The Dark Knight, it's just not that interesting. And of course, we get to a criticism that can be seen in a lot of various Christopher Nolan movies. The themes and ideas put into the movie. Now, of course, a lot of Christopher Nolan movies deal with like some sort of theme and such. However, this really ends up just having a movie that presents theories about what may or may not have happened in the story, rather than actual meaning as applicable to real life. Like, you know how in Inception, like the whole does the top fall or not? That it just really top movies like Christopher Nolan just give more theories about what may or may not have happened than what was the whole meaning behind the action in the first place. And of course, this brings me back to probably the final point: logic. Especially with the ending where Batman apparently has to go into hiding after Harvey Dent's death. I'm just like, why does he need to go into hiding? Why? Why can't you just blame Harvey Dent's death on the Joker? I mean, he's pretty much responsible for it in a certain degree anyway. And even before the start of the film, people did see Batman as a pretty good person for the most part, so I don't see why they would turn on him so quickly. And of course, they turned the whole funeral of Harvey Dent into a big funeral thing, used as a big speech about Gotham and like what the future of Gotham is and heroes and such. But really, how many people would actually show up to a public funeral about a lawyer who was good at his job, but prior to this point wasn't really seen as like a huge public celebrity figure? I probably would not have gone to that kind of funeral. So why are we turning this guy into such a martyr anyway? It just, I think Christopher Nolan was just so important, like trying to like say something big and trying to do something big with this movie, that logic sort of gets like pushed to the side a little bit. I mean, Joker says he's an agent of chaos, but all the stuff that happened in the movie had to have been pretty well planned out well in advance. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of stuff that happens in The Dark Knight that we really like to overlook because we like this movie so much. But once we actually confront what's actually in this movie, I have to admit they can still be a lot better. And yet we still hold a lot of superhero movies to like this same kind of standard. And I think there was a quote from like Robert Downey Jr. from a while ago where he said he didn't like watching the DC movies, specifically The Dark Knight, because he felt he needed to have like several college degrees in order to understand what's going on. And I can understand that. So, yeah, The Dark Knight, I'd still say The Dark Knight is technically a good movie. I just don't think it's this great, big, awesome thing that people really have built it up to be. Now, having said that, when I first saw it, I did actually think it was that great of a movie. But now, looking back on it now, it's still good. I just, really, it's not this great, big film that we remember it being. But that doesn't mean you still can enjoy it, and it's still an important part of superhero movie history. I just want you guys to know that don't give this movie more credit than it actually truly deserves, which I can pretty much say for any kind of movie. But still watch it, it's still fun. But anyway, that's what I have to say about The Dark Knight, and see you next time.